History was made on today's date. Stay tuned for an American Minute with Bill Federer.
Rufus King was born this day, March 24th, 1755. He was one of the signers of the U.S. Constitution, a minister to England, and a senator from New York. A Harvard graduate, he was aide to General Sullivan during the Revolutionary War. At age 32, Rufus King was one of the youngest delegates at the Constitutional Convention. In a speech made before the Senate at the time Missouri was petitioning for statehood, Rufus King stated, "I hold that all laws imposing slavery upon any human being are absolutely void because they are contrary to the law of nature, which is the law of God."
This has been an American Minute with Bill Federer. For a free transcript, call American Minute at 1-888-USA-WORD.
VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
And thank you for joining us on Crosstalk here on VCY America. Ladies and gentlemen, Scripture gives fathers the mandate to bring their children up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Matter of fact, Deuteronomy chapter 6 gives a good picture of what that looks like in loving God with all of our heart, our soul, and might. And then in verse 7 it says, "And thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and thou shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up." That's pretty encompassing, isn't it? You see, the education of children is a very critical component to all of this. Many parents heavily weigh this as they consider education, and there are many who have chosen to homeschool or home educate their children as a result. And rather than honor this choice and to see this important role of parents, there are school districts and even state legislatures that view parents in an adversarial way. There are those who want parents out of the education process, and they do what they can to put roadblocks in the way of parents. Some believe that the state knows better. Yet in some states, home education is under attack. One state is going so far as to require some parents, and this is a proposal, to require that some parents get approval from Child Protective Services in order to homeschool. Well, joining us today to address this, we welcome back to Crosstalk E. Ray Moore. Ray is founder and president of the Board of Exodus Mandate, a project of Frontline Ministries that focuses on prayer, revival, and Christian education. He's a retired Army Reserve chaplain, retiring as Lieutenant Colonel in 1999, and was awarded the Bronze Star for service in Gulf War I. He's the author of the book, Let My Children Go. He has co-authored with his wife, The Promise of Jonadab, Building a Christian Family Legacy in a Time of Cultural Decline. Also one of the executive producers of the 2011 award-winning film, Indoctrination, Public Schools and the Decline of Christianity in America. Also executive producer of Escaping Common Core, Setting Our Children Free. Ray, thanks so much for joining us here today on Crosstalk.
Thanks, Jim. It's great to be on again, and I just appreciate what VCY America does for all these different type of issues that affect the country, the family, and the church.
Tell us, Ray, why do you have such a passion as it relates to education and the teaching of children?
Well, it may go back to our beginning. My wife and I started homeschooling our oldest son in 1977, and while I had finished my classwork at Grace Seminary in Winona Lake, Indiana, and I had a thesis to write. So we moved down to the campus of Purdue University to start a campus evangelical outreach in 77. And he was entering the first grade, and we had decided not to put him in a public school for some of the same reasons that people don't today. I must say, however, I didn't see the horror of public education in those days as I see it now. But we were going to put him in a Christian school, but it was financially prohibitive. So Gail, my wife, and I decided, and she was going to be a teacher, that we could do it ourselves, and we would have the family school. It was very experimental, and we weren't sure how long we would do it, if it didn't succeed. But within a 3 to 6 months, we realized we had stumbled into something wonderful, and it was just incredible. So I would say the success that we had as a family had a lot to do with it, and our children are grown now. They're 55, 48, 45, and 42. I think I got the years right. We have 9 grandchildren, and our children went through homeschooling either through middle school or up to middle school, and then we tended to put them in a private or Christian school after that. My grandchildren have all been in private campus Christian schools because their mothers taught at the Christian school, and she couldn't be at home. So we've seen the impact of K-12 Christian schooling or homeschooling in our family for 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
So seeing the success in my own family and then seeing what the Scriptures say, we think it's explicit in the Bible. And so those things align together, and I'm just passionate and excited about it. And I've never been more excited, even at my age, to see what's happening today. It's just unbelievable and indescribable to see the success that our movement is having now.
Well, I know that you have observed for many years this agenda that's flowing from groups like the NEA, National Education Association, the AFT, American Federation of Teachers, and there are many who think that these organizations are working to do what is in the best interest of the children, but that's not the case, is it?
No, absolutely not. And, of course, it's a system. There's a lot of groups like the NEA that do a lot of harm, but it's the actual public school system itself that's wrong. We have issues with the existence of state education. We don't think it should exist in its present form. And when good people work in a bad system, the system always wins. So we would like to grow homeschooling and Christian schooling in enough numbers that the political class will phase it out. And we think it could be phased out. And if it keeps going like it is right now in another less than a decade, it could disappear.
Ray, why is there such an animosity against parents?
Repeat the question.
Why is there such animosity against parents?
Well, I think if you go back to Plato, he was the first one that said that the state should control. So it's not it's not a new idea. And there are those that believe that the state is God. And so, we don't believe the state is God. We believe God is God. And so in the economy of God in the Bible, he's given the stewardship of children to the family with assistance from the church, not government. They have a very, very limited role in what they can do with the family. We think generally the government should stick to law enforcement and judicial matters. They should arrest the criminals and pick up the garbage and leave the children alone.
Friends, you're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. E. Ray Moore, our guest today, founder and president of the Board of Exodus Mandate. And we were just talking about animosity here just a moment ago, and this animosity is not only coming from educational groups, but it's also coming from state legislatures. And it's actually appalling to me, Ray, to see what certain states are doing or trying to propose if they pass their legislation. And I'd like you to inform our listeners about what's happening in Connecticut, specifically in House Bill 5468.
Okay. Let me give a little background first, and then I'll address your question. Homeschooling took off. We dated in the modern era about 1980, and it started growing in the 80s, and then through the late 80s and early 90s, there was a lot of litigation and efforts to suppress homeschooling then. But the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, based in Purcellville, Virginia, and other similar groups, litigated against the legislatures and courts that were trying to stop homeschooling. and they won about 90% of the cases. So today, until very recently, we've had relative freedom or very limited regulations in all 50 states. Some are more repressive than others, but most 50 states, you can do it with very little regulation by the state. Now, with homeschooling growing in such a significant way, I think the left, the progressive left, and the Marxists and the left wing are very frantic and very desperate to try to put a stop to this. If this keeps growing like it is, they will lose their control over the children, which they're losing now, and lose their control over the future of the culture and of the nation, of the family. So I think this is motivated by an effort to stop it because they are losing power and losing control politically, culturally, and socially. Now, let's address the Connecticut bill in particular because it's the worst one of these kinds of bills. This kind of legislation is in Hawaii, New Jersey, Connecticut, maybe Illinois, Kansas. About 6 states have got bills like this, but the one in Connecticut seems to have been making the greatest progress. Is House Bill 5468, and they're not listening to when they had hearings on March 11th. Hundreds of Connecticut homeschool parents showed up and testified for 19 hours against it, and there were 3,000 homeschool parents that submitted a written testimony to the legislature against House Bill 5468, but they didn't listen. But it would require registration, that homeschool programs would register with the local school district. Well, why would we do that? We're trying to get away from the local school district. We're not going to don't want to put ourselves under the supervision of those that are trying to hurt the children. These are elements of the bill, provide curriculum information aligned with state standards. Well, why would we do that? We've got Christian curriculum now. We don't want the state standards. We don't want their curriculum. We're trying to escape it. Maintain detailed student portfolios documenting academic progress. Well, that would be looking at the progress according to the left. And so this bill is very restrictive and very harmful, and it's a sample. Now, in Hawaii, it had a similar bill, but interestingly, in Hawaii, the homeschool families, were so strong that the Hawaiian legislature backed down and defeated their bill, and the author or the sponsor of the bill voted against his own bill.
Wow, that's significant.
That was in Hawaii.
Yeah.
They defeated it. The homeschool people defeated it on, I think, February 17th, and 100 families testified against it for 3 hours. So the homeschool families are very, very active when this type of thing comes up. Mm-hmm. But in Connecticut, it passed committee, I believe, 26 to 20, but it's not become law yet. So this is what they're trying to do, and it's happening in the blue states. Thankfully, it's not happening in the red states.
I also saw that in Connecticut that they wanted like an in-person meeting with the parents, for them to declare that they're going to homeschool.
Yes, I think I just didn't mention that, but yeah, that's correct.
And I also that when they talk about this portfolio review, what's involved with that?
Well, that would just be samples of the work. What are you doing? Probably looking at your workbooks, your curriculum. Your testing, it's a portfolio would be, samples so that they could come in and inspect and see what you're really doing if you indeed are really educating the children. Of course, if you're educating them in a Christian way, using Christian curriculum and using a true history of America, or you wouldn't be really educating them according to the left.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Tell you what, friends, we're going to take a quick break. We're talking with Ray Moore today, home education under attack. And friends, pretty egregious what's going on in Connecticut right now, but they're not alone. And other states learn from what they're doing there as well. We'll be back in 1 minute. This is Crosstalk on VCY America.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, author and seminar speaker with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, since in the Garden of Eden people were eating plants and certainly insects died there, can we say that there was no death before sin?
Chris, creationists insist on the biblical doctrine that the wages of sin is death, and that Adam's rebellion brought death into a once very good creation which had no death. In doing so, we must be careful to use the right terms. Certainly Adam and Eve were commanded to eat fruit in the garden, and this implies plant death. It would also be difficult for Adam to avoid stepping on an ant as he walked around. But is this death? The Bible never uses the term living for plants or insects. It teaches that life is in the blood and speaks of the breath of life. Thus only air-breathing, blood-filled animals lived or died. Chris, there was no true death before sin. Let's go back to Genesis for our perspective on these things.
Thanks for joining us for Back to Genesis.
You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. Ray Moore with us today, founder and president of the board of Exodus Mandate. And again, they are a project of Frontline Ministries focusing on prayer, revival, and Christian education. We're talking about home education under attack, and there is much that's going on. And what we're seeing particularly in Connecticut, and there's some other states joining in as well with legislation, but very, very egregious what's happening there. As they are really wanting to control the home and really, mark out those who are wanting to home educate. One of the troubling aspects about this, Ray, as well, that the state is wanting to collect and maintain information about homeschooled children, trying to put them in a separate class. And I find that interesting because I was just looking at before the program here, there's reports coming from the National Assessment of Educational Progress, and they say as of early 2025, Connecticut's reading proficiency for 4th and 8th graders was roughly 35 to 36%. And so you've got, so many that are not meeting reading proficiency, and I'm guessing that's other skills and educational skills as well. But here they're wanting to take control over homeschoolers, which are often testing so much, greater numbers than what they're seeing from those that are in their schools.
It's not logical, and you've got to understand that they're not motivated by these things. They know, a lot of the public school educators know that it's a failing model, and so they want it to fail. The formula for the left, the Marxist formula, is out of chaos, order. They create chaos intentionally so they can impose a Marxist order on society. So you got to remember that people say, well, don't they know that they're hurting the children? Yes, they know. They know. Mm-hmm. And so they want to hurt our children. So we're trying to escape into Christian schools, into homeschooling. So your audience has to think this is not logical. I mean, we see all the things that the left is doing now in other areas and other. Don't they know that they're killing babies in the womb and that that's not good? I mean, I guess they maybe don't know. They're delusional, but no, they know, and so they want to harm our children.
Yeah. I also find it interesting, and this is very, very egregious when it comes to what's going on in the Connecticut legislation. They actually want to coordinate all of this with the Department of Children and Families. How does DCF enter into their legislation?
I'm not sure about that part. I haven't read the bill. Mm-hmm. I just have summaries of it. But yeah, they want to. They've got a lot of rules and regulations that would be, very harmful. But I have some good news. I don't think they're going to stop us. In some ways, the fact that they're trying to do this is good news because it means that we must be making a difference. And they are really frightened. The left is frightened about the future of the country if our movement continues to grow. Right now, we think between 5 and maybe up to 6 million children could be homeschooling nationally, and campus Christian schools are exploding. Hundreds of them being formed all across the country. So there's an awakening going on among churches, and I'm sure it's happening in Wisconsin and Indiana and Michigan and all over the nation. It's not fast enough, but it is happening. The Learning Council, which is a group, that's spelled COUNSEL, is a group that studies education trends. And they're predicting, now remember, this is a prediction, so it may not come to pass, but it shows that they're projecting or predicting that in 4 to 5 years, 30% of the children, all children, will be home educated, and 20% in private Christian or parochial schools, with only 50% left in public schools. Now, that means that the movement is growing exponentially. And right now, we think we might be between 15 and 17% of the total K-12.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an opportunity here to take the future away from the left. And he who controls the education system and the children wins the future. And they have understood that. The Marxists and the secular humanists have understood this for 150 years. And it's just like conservatives and Christians are waking up to it, in recent decades. And the Lord gave me the grace to see this, 30-something years ago when we started Exodus Mandate.
Yeah.
Let me put the webpage out just in case. It's exodusmandate.org, exodusmandate.org.
And I'm just going to go back here to this question I raised on Connecticut, because I really believe this is an important point, and I'm going to quote from Ralph Rodriguez of the Homeschool Legal Defense Association when he described this legislation in Connecticut, and he said this, most shocking of all the proposals, the bill would also require parents to obtain permission to homeschool from the Department of Children and Families in certain circumstances. He said one of the most troubling aspects of the proposal is the idea that parents could need permission from a child welfare agency before teaching their own children at home. He said that represents a significant shift in how homeschooling families are treated under the law. And that is, to me, Ray, that is just outrageous.
Right. And, of course, that's a very good article. Thanks for bringing it up. I did read it. And he's with the Homeschool Legal Defense Association in Purcellville, Virginia. That's the leading group in the country that's defending the homeschool movement in court and even in some of the legislatures.
And you mentioned some other states earlier. I see Hawaii, Kansas, Washington, West Virginia. They also have some legislation that is really attacking homeschool too, do they not?
Yes, but the Connecticut bill seems to be making the most progress. It's actually, I think, passed a committee. The Hawaii bill was beaten down, and even some of the sponsors voted against their own bill.
Yeah.
And so some of these may not emerge, but it just shows that there is a trend and a desire by the left to put a stop to this.
And you mentioned the hearing that went on in Connecticut, some 19 hours of testimony, and then thousands of homeschoolers that also wrote in opposition to it, and they passed it anyways?
Well, they don't listen to us, It's like talking to the devil and saying, please, Mr. Devil, stop hurting our children.
Right.
Be good. Be good. Well, he can't be good. He only, graduates from evil to evil. He doesn't have any restrictions on his behavior. If he was smart, he would say, I've done enough bad, enough evil. I think I'm going to try to be righteous and godly for a while. He's not able to do that.
Do you know offhand if the Connecticut Senate has taken up this issue yet?
I don't know.
Okay. So I see this as a House bill itself, and friends, the normal course of legislation that goes through one body and chamber and then the other, and if they both pass, it goes to the governor for signature there. But to see this attack,
if it passes Connecticut, it will start a possible trend in other blue states. Thankfully, a lot of the red states are not going to probably go with this, but then they will be offering other solutions that might be, bad in a different way.
Yeah. We don't hear much about Common Core like we used to. Is it dead?
I'm sorry. Yeah, that I think as an issue that's kind of faded away as a current issue. In some states, like my state, South Carolina, repealed Common Core, and they renamed it and kept 92% of the provisions of the old model, but they called it something else, but it was still Common Core under a new name. And this is why public school Christian or conservative reform is such a bad idea. So people say, oh, we won, we beat them, we knocked them back. Yeah, they just renamed it, and they gave it a different name, and you think you beat it, but you didn't. So it takes conservatives 3 to 5 years to realize they were tricked again.
So many of these initiatives, we find that same thing happening, whereby there's outrage, whether it be the outcome-based education or Goals 2000 or here Common Core, but it's, as you say, it becomes the same trappings, but in a different label, looks a little bit more attractive until the American people really figure out, hey, this is one and the same thing.
And that's why conservatives and Christians and churches need to give up the silly idea of reforming public education. It's not broken. It's actually working very well. It's highly efficient for socialism. And so you can't fix socialism. You have to abandon it. You have to abandon it for a free market system. And education, K-12 education, even higher ed, should be under the domain of the family and the church or private associations. It's not a function of the government of the state.
Mm-hmm. I'd like you to comment on one other thing, and we'll talk more about alternatives as well. But there was a Harvard professor, Elizabeth Bartholet. She had, back in 2019, written in the Arizona Law Review. She didn't have too many complimentary things to say about home education, did she?
No, and it's a very important paper. I don't know that your readers would have time. It's an 80-page article in the Arizona Law Review in 2019. And she kind of laid out the framework or the strategy for this effort to suppress and push back home education. And it was kind of tabled, the argument, because of COVID, kind of shut her down for a while. But in 2019, before the pandemic, she was going to sponsor a big symposium at Harvard, for law professors from all over the country to talk about her paper and how they could suppress home education. Well, COVID came along and the schools were shut down, and she was shut down temporarily, and that's when our movement made a great leap forward because so many people stayed home. They didn't go back to school. So now it's come back around, and she's very influential, in a bad way.
Right, there are a number of parents who are they're bewildered, and here we are in the spring of the year, and there are opportunities that parents are thinking about as it relates to the upcoming school year. Some parents wonder, what do we do? How can we handle this? We need to work. We can't stay home and educate our children, and yet we are opposed to the kind of things that we're hearing about on the program today. What guidance do you have?
Well, if one of the parents can be home, usually the mother, then you can homeschool. And some cases, my son, for example, he and his wife are homeschooling their 2 girls. One of them is really not school age yet, but the wife has got it worked out where at her employment, she works for health care. She's working 3/4 of a week. They're paying her, and she's home 1 or 2 days a week to home educate the kids, and then they have a nanny or something come in. So they're able to homeschool and juggle their schedule so they can do both. And then you have sometimes grandparents can step in and help homeschooling, so it can be done even if the mother has to work outside the home some. Many states have laws, however, that the parents, if they homeschool, have to do over 50% of the instruction. They can't delegate it out.
Mm-hmm.
You do have micro schools now where 3 or 4 families will band together and hire a teacher, and they may be 15 children in a little, like a one-room schoolhouse.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes maybe only one of the parents is able to be available to the children. Others have to work. The big thing, though, that could really cause growth in the movement is if the churches would step up.
Tell you what, we're going to have to break right there, and we'll talk about the churches after the break. Friends, you're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. Our phone number, by the way, if you have a question, 800-733-9829. Question or comment, 800-733-9829.
Relationships have been shattered due to lack of forgiveness, impacting marriages, family relationships, even the church. Some have said that forgiveness is the most difficult commandment we are given as Christians. And why is that? Perhaps it is because it strikes at the core of our pride that says we deserve better than we are getting. In the book, Forgiven People Forgive, Pastor Jeff Miller shows us the heart of why we should forgive, which is the fact that God has forgiven us, and we are commanded to forgive. It is easy for bitterness to take root in a heart that is unforgiving. Forgiven People Forgive is available for a donation to VCY of just $9, 3 copies for a donation of $24, or 5 copies for a donation of $33. Call 1-800-729-9829. Ask for Forgiven People Forgive.
You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. Indeed, we have seen home education come under attack, and our guest is here today to say, hey, there's some solutions to all of this. And it's important, friends, to see the advocacy on those attacks against homeschooling, like what's going on in Connecticut right now. But our guests here are focusing on solutions and moving forward. Our number to Crosstalk is 800-733-9829. That's 1-800-733-9829. Ray, you were just talking about this matter of starting and parents wondering, how are we going to go about doing this? And you were talking about getting together and getting together with some other families and having grandma and grandpa help in some of it. And parents have a certain level of responsibility as far as percent of teaching. But you started mentioning the church. So continue on with what you're talking about. Is how can the church get engaged with this?
Yeah, the biggest failure in the Christian community right now, but that is rapidly improving, and I'm happy to report, is the churches have not been engaged. You would think that that's the main thing they should be doing, doing the sacraments and the pastoral prayers and the preaching and teaching on the Lord's Day. But during the week, they should be taking care of the children in the church. And so many of them, let their children go into public schools, and they're just oblivious to it. And I have to say that my greatest complaint has been with the pastors, and I'm talking about evangelical pastors. They're just amazing. But that is really changing quickly, and we're happy to report that. There's about 100,000 evangelical churches in America and about 95,000 public schools. Because we could change out one for one, but we don't need 100,000 new schools. If we had 15 or 20,000 new Christian schools and churches, that would go a long way to meeting the needs. Some of the bigger churches could partner with the smaller churches and provide facilities. We don't need to build one building. They're all over America, sitting empty 5 days a week, and I don't think it's a good stewardship of the church buildings if they are sitting empty 5 days a week. God wants them to be used, and they could be used for our children in our churches, and they could provide a help for people who maybe don't even go to church. They might bring their kids to a Christian school, and it could be used as a means of evangelization for the children and their families. So this is a way to grow the church, and it's sad that it's been so late, long coming, but it is coming now.
Well, friends, we'll come back to more questions here, but let's go to Matt, who's calling from Henderson, Nevada. Hi, Matt. You're on the air.
Hey, I had a couple quick questions. One was, do you think that we should continue hooking our trailer to the conservative
movement?
I think it's an ally. I certainly believe in voting, and we have two political parties. One of them is, given over to evil almost completely, and I'm not going to name them. The other party is, friendly to our
One of them is, given over.
Oh, sorry, we're getting feedback from you, Matt. Go ahead, Ray.
I think we should be voting. We should be participating in the political process. And I think we need to be very careful and be very discerning and not make assumptions, about even our friends, political friends.
Mm-hmm.
But, no, I don't think we should, step away from the political process.
Yeah. How in voting is that political process as far as engagement? I know a number of states right now, the primary season has begun. We've got a big election coming up this November. How important is that to this matter of education and homeschool freedom?
Well, I think it is, and because I have been, participated in the Republican Party, and it's much more friendly to our issues and concerns. So, of course, like I said, in the red states, they're not attacking homeschooling, but in the blue states, they are.
Mm-hmm.
So to avoid the political arena completely would be a mistake. But even on our side, we need to be very careful because there are a lot of people that are, pretending to be conservative but are not.
Yeah. Well, very critical. And matter of fact, folks, there are many, many issues as it pertains to education and whom you cast votes for. In matter of fact, spring elections, I know, like in Wisconsin, for instance, there are a number of school board seats that are up for election, and very, very critical as to who fills these positions. But sadly, Ray, there are many who feel, oh, it's just a local election, just school board. I'm going to sit this one out.
Yeah. In Wisconsin, I don't know what your denomination is, but you have the Wisconsin Lutheran Synod, and they have, at one time, had 300,000 children in parochial schools. Yeah. And I think they, mostly in Wisconsin, but they would be in other upper middle states. I have a Baptist background in South Carolina, and Baptists have no history until recent years of Christian schools or homeschooling. It's incredible.
Let's get back to Matt. Matt, we were cut off there. You had a second follow-up question. Go ahead.
Yeah, my second question is I'm originally from Colorado, and one of the churches there recently had the congregants basically take 10 minutes to send emails to shut down human trafficking in Colorado. Basically, they were trying to pass a bill that was legalizing prostitution.
Yeah.
Do you think that was the right step? I definitely...
Yeah, I tell you what, that's not our topic here today, Matt, so we're not going to go ahead further on that. We have covered that on a previous program, though, but we're dealing with the matter of education here today. Let's go to Tom in Delafield, Wisconsin. Tom, you're on the air.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
Sir,
I first saw you, I want to say 2.5 years ago on a program called Stand in the Gap, I think it was.
Mm-hmm. With Sam Rohr? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And anyway, I was impressed at that time by your elan and your fighting spirit. And I know
Sam real well. He's a close friend. Mm-hmm. So thank you for supporting him. He's wonderful, and he has I've been on his show in the past as well.
I was wondering whether you've ever encountered any organized resistance from, let's say, the NEA.
I couldn't quite hear the question.
And so, have you had, thank you for the call here, Tom.
Okay.
Have you had organized resistance against what you're doing? And then he mentioned specifically the NEA.
NEA?
Yeah, have you had organized resistance against them?
Yeah. We've basically, we've been mostly ignored over the years. They didn't take us seriously until the pandemic came. I've written a couple of books. I've done movies. And we basically had our message going to the churches and the Christian community, trying to wake them up. And so that is happening now. And it really, our movement just took off after the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So we're living in a kairos moment, which is a Greek word for opportune time. English has one word for time coming from chronology, or chronos, but there's another word meaning time in the Greek, and that's kairos, which means an opportune or divine moment. And we're in a moment like that in history, because if we can grow homeschooling and Christian schooling, we can we can be in charge of this culture and take back our nation.
Our number to Crosstalk, 800-733-9829. We have Rich calling from Burlington. Hi, Rich, you're on the air.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. I just want to say, first of all, I was a retired public school teacher, and I could not agree with your guest more. As Christian parents, should not have your kids in public schools. That would be like sending children into a military battle without training. It's just foolish. But one thing people need to know is that your schools, the teachers' unions, heavily support all the Democrats that are adamantly anti-Christian, and so dues are that public school teachers have to pay in a lot of states goes to support Democratic political causes, and in particular those that protect public schools and public school teachers. So their money is going for that. And the best example of what happens when you try to do something about it is what happened with Scott Walker back in 2010 when he tried to make it non-mandatory for public school teachers to join the union.
Right.
And the teachers' union enrollment dropped almost in half.
Yeah. Thank you, Rich. Thank you for raising that issue. So, Ray, let me just ask you, he said he was a Christian who taught in public school, and he was warning parents, not to do that. And he also was indicating by his call here that the dues that many are paying into, like the NEA, are going against really the values that they hold.
Right. Well, the only way we're going to defeat this system, we're not going to defeat it by complaining and protesting and, oh, Mr. Liberal, please be good. Stop hurting my children. They're not going to stop doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to drain the swamp. It's better to drain the swamp than to fight the mosquitoes. And so many conservatives spend all their time protesting and complaining. 35 years ago, I saw that wasn't going to work, and I offered the Exodus mandate to get out and start fresh with new Christian schools and homeschooling. And it's now finally working. We're rolling like a freight train. And so the left is trying to suppress it with the bad laws that we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of Christians and conservatives, they waste their time on running for school board. I think it's a terrible idea. It's not wrong. It's not a sin, but it's just not going to change the schools.
Yeah. And now I know that there are those that we've interviewed that would take issue with that, Ray, saying I'm as a school board member, I can make a difference and keep some of these dark things from educating our children.
Let me tell you a story. This is a true story. I won't name the person, but I've got a close friend, a very prominent California conservative who served for 3 or 4 terms in the General Assembly as a Republican Christian conservative when the Republicans still, had control or had influence in state government. That's been a long time. And he was chairman of the House Education Committee in the General Assembly. And he's written this up, and I could probably send it to anybody that wanted it. He said that he got laws passed in California that were good laws, conservative laws, and they were on the books. They were the law. And he said the public school system just ignored him, ignored the laws. He said, I didn't have the capacity to go arrest them for disobeying the law, but they didn't pay any attention to the laws. He said we ran 50 people for school board in San Diego County, and I don't know the year, but it's been 10 or 15 years ago. Well, at least 10, maybe 15. And he said we won 36 out of 50 races in San Diego County, and we absolutely controlled 2 districts, had not just a majority, but we had an absolute majority with Christian conservatives. And he said it made no difference. He said they just ignored the school boards.
Tell you what, we're up against a break, and we'll take more calls following it. So we have with us today Ray Moore and the website exodusmandate.org. Back in a minute.
For the Worldview Report, I'm Brandon House. Our website's worldviewtube.com. Recently, I interviewed my friend Carl Tycrib with forcingchange.org. He went to a pagan conference of 1,000 witches in Minneapolis, St. Paul. He had many things to say, but the most shocking was how many attendees who were now involved in pagan spirituality, Wicca religion, witchcraft, were once described Christians, or they attended a church, or they were even a pastor. And he said the common theme when he would talk to them was, I went to my pastor or my youth pastor and I asked for answers about this or that. And they had no concrete answers. They just said, have faith. In other words, folks, they didn't point them back to the Bible. They didn't provide a biblical framework for all areas of life and addressing the very specific issues they have. Yet the Bible says it will make us complete for all good works. We need to be involved in giving people answers, or they will flee to paganism.
This is Crosstalk on VCY America. The number 800-733-9829. It's 800-733-9829. Ray, as we're talking about the matter of education, tell us about the resources you have available at exodusmandate.org.
Okay, good. Thank you for asking. We've got books, videos, a lot of articles, and if they can go to my webpage at exodusmandate.org and just see what they want, and then contact us at the email exodusmandate@gmail.com. Now, I'm also on the board. I'm the chairman of the board for publicschoolexit.com, and your friend Alex Newman is also on the board. He and I and Dran Reese are co-founders of that ministry, and it's based in San Diego, but it's working nationwide. And they probably have more resources on how to get started, information on curriculum on publicschoolexit.com than I have on my webpage. I have a lot of sermons and articles more about the theology, the philosophy, and the arguments in favor of home education and Christian schooling, but publicschoolexit.com has more specific information about how to get started. A lot of people want to do it, but they're afraid to get started, and they need help there.
Okay, again, that's exodusmandate.org, and if you have specific questions, even sending an email to exodusmandate@gmail.com.
Right.
And I see also you've got a site, too. There's different video clips at indoctrinationmovie.com as well.
They can order that from the office, but look up publicschoolexit.com, because I know you have Alex Newman on your show from time to time.
Yeah.
He and I are part of that together.
Okay, again, that's publicschoolexit.com.
Okay.
And Ray Moore with us today. Ray, what would you say are perhaps the top couple of reasons that you hear for parents who say, no, homeschooling, we're not going to go that direction, or their greatest concern?
The things that motivate families to homeschool in order, concern about the school environment, and that looks primarily at safety and security and negative peer pressure and bullying, and that seems to motivate 83% of parents that pull out. The second argument is the desire for more moral and religious instruction, and that would look at a real strict Christian belief, more Bible. And that seems to be the main motivation of 75%. Then dissatisfaction with the academic instruction in public schools is 72%. We know now that the public school system is failing as an academic institution. It's been failing as a moral and Christian place for decades, but now it's not even educating. And then the fourth reason at 72% is more emphasis on family life. Desire for the family to be closer together, for the family, the parents to be closer to their children. And so those are the four main reasons that people do it.
Yeah. Okay, exodusmandate.org, and let's go right back. We've got Ken in Holman, Wisconsin. Ken, you're on the air.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you for the gentleman that is giving such a great presentation of our public school system. And really, reform it's just like the reformers in the Catholic Church. It can't be done. My question is, Ephesians 6:4, a challenge to all fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. When we get these questionnaires coming back from the schools, and I got one, and I filled it full of Scripture, and I said, go back to 62 and 63 and reverse back that decision to take creation as the teaching out of the school. Totally. I mean, it can't even be suggested and evolution. I mean, we just can't do this. What do you think on that? I put 0. I will.
Well, I certainly believe in
Thanks, Ken.
creation, and I think creation should be taught, but it's not going to ever be taught in public schools. And so most of the Christian schools and homeschools use creation materials. Ken Ham's program, Answers in Genesis, is very strong and is being used, in many of our Christian schools. So, again, I want to say you can't fix the public schools, so don't try.
Let's go.
Spend all your time trying to fix them.
We got one last call to get in. This is Ron in Tri-Cities, Washington. Ron, you're on the air.
Yes, sir. I'm a substitute teacher. I teach all over the place, and I want to echo what Reverend Moore says. I see rainbow flags and child mutilation flags all over the place. They have these big posters about sexual anarchy. They don't call it that, of course, but clubs that they could join. In fact, they advertise it like they do the chess club. Also, they have Democratic Socialists of America Club in our public schools. We do the Pledge of Allegiance. None of them know it, so I'll ask them, what's pledge mean? Nobody knows. What's allegiance mean? Nobody knows. I'm talking high school kids.
Wow.
They're not. We're absolutely failing our kids. It's just wretched. And, of course, the answer is always more money. No, they need more accountability. And, I'd like to see it changed. And maybe I know a lot of good teachers there. There's a lot of good teachers there. But you're right. The whole system is so warped. I know people in high positions, and they really can't do a lot.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you. We're about out of time here. Thank you for the call. Ray, this is another substitute teacher, just kind of affirming what you said there as well.
Well, we certainly know that's true. I mean, I'm thankful you're calling in. I hope your audience, if they have any public school people listening, will be warned and, get their children out.
Ray, with half a minute left, what would you like to leave with our listeners?
Well, we're winning this argument slowly, since the pandemic, and we're on the verge of grabbing and taking control of education in America. It's just enormous. So let's not fail at the finish line. Let's keep doing it. Get our churches to start doing education. Talk to your pastor and get him to start a school in the church. And if he says he's not, then you ask him why not. That's your job, Pastor Smith and Pastor Jones. You're supposed to give the sacraments and preach the gospel and do the Lord's Supper and things like that on the Lord's Day. But during the week, we can have a school in the church.
Ray, thank you. We're out of time. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Okay, Ray Moore with us today. Again, friends, the website exodusmandate.org. God bless you, friends. Thanks for joining us today on Crosstalk.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.